today, I would like to hand over the microphone to Federico Gonzalez, who will introduce us to the work of the European Technology Chamber, its mission, and the tools they offer to their advocates. Federico, the microphone is yours.
Thank you so much, Sandra. A pleasure, as always, to be here participating in this great webinar with an amazing topic. Today, I am honored to share with you some basic information about the chamber, and I am sharing my screen with you right now. I am sharing it in a presentation mode so you can see it, let's say, full size in your computers and devices. So the UTEC, as I mentioned, I am going to provide you guys a brief introduction of our chamber and our alliances and our virtual UTEC center. The chamber, let me see if this changed. Yeah, the chamber has born or is born back in 2015 as a non-profit organization in Switzerland, even though our headquarters are in nearby Munich in Germany. And basically, our three main goals are, as you can see in your screens, competitiveness. In one hand, we are trying to help European companies to be more competitive, and we are trying to do it through technology and through innovation. In the other hand, the growth or the expansion, we are also helping our members in Europe and also outside Europe to have access and opportunities, not only in Europe, but also in other emerging markets like China or Africa, of course, also in Latin America. And sustainability. Of course, we are trying also to help our members to do business in a more sustainable way, to reach the United Nations SDGs, and to use technology to be more sustainable and environmental friendly. So in a nutshell, this is the three main goals and activities of the chamber. The value proposition that we have, well, basically, I can describe us as a very strong networking platform. At the chamber, we are constantly matching people with people, companies with companies, even some occasions companies with governments, and we are trying to do it for a greater good and for the best of our members. We have a toolbox in where we have publications. Our members can write and can participate with us writing white papers, position papers, can write articles at our magazine Visions for Europe, sharing their knowledge and experience with all our community. And then we have this virtual platform that I was speaking about. Right now we are inside this virtual platform, the UTEC online platform, in where we have more than 650 sections meetings where per year. We have more than 200 webinars like this one every year. We have our matching platform, we have all our booths, and we arrange our trade fairs and exhibitions. All of that, of course, later after this webinar, Alejandra can provide you more information about that. Of course, we also are organizing our physical or offline activities, like our 4 UTEC summits every year and the delegation trips now very soon to be reopened again. Thank God the COVID situation is a little more stable than a few months ago, and we are going to be able to travel again. And of course, we are also developing and offering to our members our UTEC programs that will help them to develop their business in a better way, in a more efficient way, in a more competitive way, like our social media program, our UTEC Center program, the Climate Action Partnership, or the Investment Forum. So all of those are programs that we are developing for free for our members, for our advocates, in order to help them to do things, to do business in a better way, in a more efficient way. The structure of the chamber, as you can see, is divided into alliances. In there we have the regional alliances, China, Africa, Latin America, also in Europe, and in Middle East. In all those locations, we are having, in one way or in the other, some presence. We are providing, in one way or in the other, help to our members and advocates to do business and to land in those territories. And we will be very happy to help every one of you to continue doing so and being able to grow through the UTEC's help and support. Of course, the impact alliances with SDGs, with finance, with climate action in there, we are also providing a lot of help, a lot of support to our members in those fields. And last but not least, of course, the tech alliances in where we are deep diving in different business sectors related to technology, like digital transformation, like manufacturing, like IoT, in where, well, through our communities in each one of those sectors, we are developing activities together, we are helping each other, we are cooperating each other, and we are growing each other. Of course, we are also arranging our summits and expos. I have to say very, very soon, a few weeks later, on June the 30th, we have our next expo from the Latin America Alliance. I am sure it will be an amazing event. I invite you, all of you, to participate because it's for free, and it's also going to be an amazing, we are having amazing speakers, amazing activities, and of course, amazing networking opportunities. Latin America is coming very soon, and during the year, we are also going to have China, we are going to have our future technology global summit with different alliances cooperating together to arrange a very important tech event and summit. And of course, at the end, almost the end of the year, our UTech Investment Awards with a lot of opportunities, especially for investors and also for startups. Of course, we are also inviting you to participate and to be part of our virtual events. As you can see, and as I already said before, we have more than 200 webinars, same as this one every year, and with over than 50,000 registrants and more than 680 keynote speakers. So I have to say the performance of the UTech in this regards and providing knowledge and sharing experience with all our community is very big, and we are happy to count on you to be there, sharing time with us and sharing also your knowledge and your expertise with all of us. Of course, I invite all of you to check our tech.forum platform. In there is where we are arranging all our activities, or most of our activities. Very soon, it will be 100% developed. It's already, of course, accessible. And I invite you all to have a look on there. And if you have questions on the tech.forum or any other, let's say, activity or information that I shared with you guys, of course, you can ask Alejandra about them. She will be very, very happy to share with you more info and provide you more insights about the UTech. So that's all from my side, Alejandra, and the rest of the people. I wish you all a great webinar, and to the audience, enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Federico, so much for that great UTech presentation. Also, thank you so much, Sandra, for those wonderful welcome words. As they already mentioned, my name is Maria Alejandra Pulido, and I am the Latin American Alliance Director for the European Technology Chamber. Good morning to all of you that are joining us from Latin America. Good afternoon and maybe good night, those that maybe are in some other places all around the globe. Today, we're going to be talking about metaverse, and actually which ones are those main tendencies, and as well all those insights that we can find in Latin America, but not only, as well maybe how we can join forces with other countries in order to improve metaverse all around the globe. I would like to invite you all to share your comments, to share your as well questions. You can do that through the public chat, so you can start to do that from this moment. Please don't wait to the end of the panel to do it. I'm going to be taking those comments, some questions, and sharing all of them with the panelists here today, so that we will be able to provide you a feedback about them. Today, we're honored with the presence of 3 great panelists, all of them experienced professionals with a great vision. First of all, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker, Emil Jimenez, who is an award-winning marketing and business executive that in 2020 set out to produce the most transformational idea of his life, an AI digital twin platform that will allow humanity to go beyond their limits and live forever through data. What started as studies bootstrap requests for immortality has expanded into multi-million-dollar value business that is moving us into a world of AI enhanced humanity. So, Emil, I will give you the microphone right now. When you will finish the keynote speech, I will introduce the other panelists to the audience, okay? Super. I'm going to give you the rights right now as a presenter so that you can share your screen. Okay, here it goes. You are in mute, or maybe the headphones, but we cannot hear you. No? I cannot hear you, chat. Can you give me a confirmation if you can hear it, Emil?
No, I can't hear him.
Okay, no, we cannot hear you, Emil. Let's try without the headphones. No, we cannot hear you. No. Maybe you can turn off the microphone and once again turn it on. No, we cannot hear you. Asmat, can you support us, please, in this? You're going to try to get inside once again to the room? Okay. Okay, I apologize with the audience. Emil will be here very soon. Let's just wait 2 minutes and he will be here doing the keynote presentation. Okay. I just want to check, Ilana, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm here.
Super. Emil?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Now we can hear you well.
Okay. Can you allow me to?
Yes. I will give you the rights. Now you have them. Yeah. We cannot see you though. We can hear you well, but we cannot see you.
Okay. I'll see how I can manage this. Yes. Audio. Okay. Are we good now?
Super good.
All right. There we go. Good. Okay. Let's get into it, guys. All right. Thank you for the intro, everyone. I'll tell you, I like to always start this with the story of why, because I think it's very relevant in terms of the metaverse. Because if you think of the metaverse for our generation, I think it's the wrong perspective. We need to think of it from a generational perspective. And quite frankly, this entire idea, as Maria mentioned, was actually inspired by my daughter. She's 7 years old now, but about 2 years ago, she was 2.5 years ago, she was 4 years old and she was playing with her iPad. And for the first time, Siri popped up and she asked me, "Daddy, what is this?" And I said, "Honey, this is Siri. She's like a friend. Say hi, Siri, and ask her a question." So my little girl thought for a second and she said, "Hi, Siri, do you have a mommy?" And then she proceeded to ask questions like, "Do you like ice cream? I want to see your toys." And as Siri asked us, her and Siri had this conversation, something really interesting happened. After about 10 minutes of her laughing and playing with Siri, she says, "Siri, I love you. You're my best friend." And that I always like to say that's when the psychologist in me kicked in. A little background story on me. I studied psychology. My mother's a psychologist. So I've always been in this world, let's say. And I noticed that at that moment, my daughter went from having a transactional relationship, show me your toys, to I love you, you're my best friend, to an emotional relationship. And that's a very big leap when it comes to relationship building and connecting with things and emotions. So I said to myself, wow, my little girl just connected with Siri, on an emotional level. And then I started thinking about what her world is going to look like when she's my age, right? I'm 42 at the time. And I said, wow, my little girl's life is going to be completely different than ours. Her relationship with technology is a very conversational relationship. And even today, she says, Siri, play me a song, right? And no, I don't like that one. So it's a relationship basically. So I said to myself, okay, today she talks to Siri, but what if she can talk to me like this, even if I'm not alive? Because Siri is just an interface to a database, right? So I've worked in tech, and I figured, how can I become that database? How can I upload my mind, my wisdom, my story, my love, so that my little girl can always have daddy, even if I'm not alive? So that's really how this whole thing started. But in the process, I realized something, which is this technology is very useful for you and your personal development, because what it is, it's basically a mirror to yourself. As you upload this data, you start understanding yourself, because we offer data analysis on you. So it's like a Google Analytics dashboard of you. So the idea is that you create this digital twin, and over time, it knows your story, it analyzes the data, but then it can live on forever through data. So that's how we approach the digital twin and this whole metaverse. So I'll explain a little more detail on this. I'll skip this part. So if you look at what we've built, or what we're in the process of building, I'll share with you this video so it gives you a better idea of where we are right now. Hi, I'm your personal digital twin. I learn by asking you many questions. Each answer builds my wisdom. You grow through self-reflection, and I get a little bit closer to becoming you. Let me show you around. Here's our training screen, where you can view our progress based on the number of questions you've answered for this phase of my training. Each phase adds a new dimension to my abilities, and the possibilities are endless. The mind map section is like our consciousness. Different questions will challenge you to reflect and create a more well-rounded version of us. Each swipe revealing more details about our thinking and connecting us to similar personalities. Think of it like collecting cards as a kid, only for your mind. You'll even be able to ask him a question. Hi, Leonardo da Vinci. What do you think of Mind Bank? Socrates once said, to know thyself. And who knows us better than people in our inner circle? Each interaction will help us evolve and store our wisdom for eternity.
I always wanted to know, what was the happiest moment of your life?
In the end, I am nothing without you, but together we can move humanity forward. Let's go beyond. As you can see, there was a lot of features there with regards to like understanding oneself. And that's something that we actually discovered even during the process. What people are most interested in is using a digital twin to reveal things about yourself, your mind. So we've actually went and updated a lot of the dashboards to give more data. So one of the things that you'll see pretty soon coming out is what we call a personality dashboard, where we measure things like conscientiousness, agreeableness, neuroticism, openness, and extroversion. We also measure things when it comes to the word cloud association to see topics. Word rate measures engagement. Topic analysis, you can see what topics are occupying your mind at this particular moment in time. And then obviously overall sentiment, either through an aggregate level of a week, day, month, or today. But really what it is, it's self-discovery, right? A constant feedback loop about yourself, And a lot of times when the metaverse, you see the context of the metaverse, you see from a context of many people in this metaverse. Whereas we're seeing it one person in your own little metaverse, and how this technology and this let's say user experience can help you grow as a person. To dive a little bit deeper into some of the dashboards, you can see that even within these personality traits, we're able to measure within there other things, so that you can get a deeper understanding about yourself. Because ultimately, that's the whole purpose of a tool, right? To get in, at least in this particular case, it is about moving our industry from healthcare to self-care, empowering people to understand themselves and take care of themselves. In this particular case, from a personality perspective and mental health perspective. But the aggregate data of that is your life, it's your story, it's your digital twin that gets carried on through generation and generation, with the hopes that you can live on forever and your story lives on forever for your family. As in terms of the ecosystem, we've built this with like obviously the future in mind. And one of the things that we looked at is how do we make this obviously very secure? Because there's going to be a lot of, you know, very personal data, and also we're adding later on biometric data through physiological devices. So the solution there is, which I think is another thing I'll talk into in a second, is the advent of Web3 and blockchain technology is allowing for a lot of this metaverse to actually exist in a secure way and in a decentralized way. And that's really the shift that we're seeing right now, where the Facebooks and Instagrams of the world are really being decentralized. So you own your data, you manage your data, and you're the, let's say, gatekeeper of this data. These platforms will be providing services. So in our case, the service we provide is storage and analysis, but the data is yours. You can see a lot of use cases at the moment, for example, for personal development, like I mentioned before, government. So solo mission, imagine interstellar or interplanetary travel where you're traveling for long distances. You need this kind of like this metaverse self to kind of help you through the process, and so you don't feel lonely. But what's interesting is that the United States government last year put a call to create digital twins of soldiers. So you already see that even the government is looking into, okay, how do we create a digital twin of a soldier so that we don't lose that knowledge that a general might have, or a captain who served on a specific mission might have. This is very important knowledge for in this particular case for the government, but from the personal development case, it's family knowledge, right? And then the last is the self-care support, and this is more along the lines of how do we scale the healthcare system and and psychologists and coaches so that people are more empowered to take care of themselves with the right data. And that's an area that's really interesting as well. A lot of HR professionals are obviously interested in this space because they can see it as a data-driven personal development. As we know, increased self-awareness, it has a lot of benefits for mental health and resilience. But more importantly, it's like productivity and the reduction of health-related costs. So there's a lot of space for that as well. I'll skip this slide here, but the more important aspect here is why now, and I think this is the key to this metaverse conversation here is timing. As we all remember the days without cell phones and things like that, but if you can imagine how technology's changed in, let's say, in the last 10 years, really the fundamental shift is going from 3G to 4G, and from 4G to 5G. Because what happens, basically, we have more bandwidth, and we can send across a lot more data through a device, for example, right? So this movement is making rich media experiences possible, data experiences possible, IoT, smart city, all of this digitization of our world is possible now because of this technology. And the other aspect of it is peripherals, right? So we're getting so many things now that are pulling in data about our lives. So smartwatches, fitness trackers, all kinds of stuff. And obviously all of this data is getting sent via 5G to either your mobile device or other platforms for analysis, right? So pulling in data locally, but sending into the cloud for analysis, right? So, and what's going to happen later on is that analysis is going to be on device. So you get some analysis on device, but pretty soon a lot of this heavy computing power is going to move to the mobile phone, and it's going to be even more decentralized. So that's really the interesting take right now, if you look at it from an infrastructure and a technology side of things. The other aspect of it is, this is a study done by Gartner in 2020, where they estimated that the digital twin of the person will be a transformative technology with a global penetration of about 1 to 5% within 5 years, actually. That's a lot of people, if you think about it, that the entire 1 to 5% of the planet will have a digital twin within 5 or so years. And then where will this digital twin live? You know, in our particular case as Mindbank, it's about living in our platform for you to understand yourself, right? And for you to self-care. But Metaverse obviously is a digital twin of you as an avatar, potentially. And that has its own implications and its own environment. So it's really interesting in terms of where this technology is going. Obviously, from a perspective of self-care, just the aging population is a huge factor. We saw it with COVID, how hospitals weren't able to cope with all of, with with so many people sick. Now, let's fast forward to 2050 when we have over 12% of the population, rather 25% of the population over the age of 65, right? That's going to be a massive toll on the healthcare industry. And there's no way that infrastructure as we have it today will manage that. So one solution is to decentralize that and make it much more autonomous and self-care that is obviously enhanced and managed possibly by a healthcare professional, but you're taking a lot more ownership of your health data. And that's something that's also plays the role within this metaverse. And in case of what people worry about the most, it's interesting. It's like 46% of the people, loss of memory was the biggest fear that they had. So storing this data, managing it, and creating this digital twin is really important for that perspective for people as they age. And then if we shift down to the Gen Z, the younger target audience, their whole thing really was about hypercognition, right? It's how can we make it as customizable as possible in multiple and digital realities at the same time? So this, this living between digital and traditional worlds is their life. And if you go back to my daughter, right, having that conversation with Siri, she has a conversation with Siri just as if she has a conversation with her friends. There's a very blurred lines there. So we have to really think in that context of how 40 years from now, what is the world going to look like? And how do we work towards that? I guess last but not least, one of the things we discussed earlier before that people called was what does this look like from an ethical framework in terms of humanity? And one of the things that we did about almost a year ago is create a petition for the United Nations, to add to the Declaration of Human Rights a new article. So basically, the article states that all of the rights of human are extended to the digital twin, because we want to make change the conversation from a technology one where it's SOC 2 certification, HIPAA compliancy, GDPR, blah blah blah, to an ethical framework where taking control and kidnapping a digital twin would be the same as kidnapping a human, right? Deleting a digital twin, maliciously would be the same as killing a human being to some extent, right? Obviously not the same, but we want to change the thinking, right, and the ethical framework. So it's not technical, but more ethical. I think that's it from my side. And I guess I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Emil. Now I would like to ask Chad and Ilana to turn off the camera. Please turn it on. I now would like to introduce Ilana Meix. She is the co-founder and the software designer and CEO at ePioneers, a climate fintech bringing environmental credit chain. With studies in finance, she already did an MBA in renewable energies, computer science, and history. Ilana brings more than 8 years of work experience in hedge funds, private equity, derivatives trading, and as well as business consulting with one of the big fours, as it is KPMG. And she actually work as well with a startup building World Tech Makers, an MIT innovator of U35 Global Shaper and Colombia Marca País entrepreneur. She enjoys developing ecosystems with innovation, technology, and creativity. So, Ilana, I will give you the microphone, say briefly hello to the audience, then I will introduce Chad.
Thank you so much for that introduction. That was great. I appreciate it. And thank you, Emil. That was very interesting as well. And Chad, very nice to share the panel today. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, happy to share with you some time and insights. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lana. Now, please welcome Chad Smiley. He's a US citizen, but currently resides in Colombia, South America. He has worked and lived in over 20 countries from the Middle East, Asia, Latin America. Has been working in innovative technologies for the last 25 years, and over the last year within blockchain, Web3, and metaverse space, and founding MetaWin Media, which will be the metaverse as a service for SMBs. So, Chad, if you would like to say hello to the audience, this is the opportunity. Please have the microphone.
Yes, thank you very much. Pleasure to be on this panel. The metaverse is a hot topic right now, and it's just going to get bigger. So it's very exciting times right now, and thank you for having me on the panel.
Thank you, Chad. So with this brief introduction from our panelists, let's start the panel discussion. So the first question for all of you will be, why do you think that now is the right time for metaverse to exist? Who would like to start?
So I'll give it a go. Yeah, I think in terms of where we're at, there are many new developments happening around the wording of Web3. And I'll kind of go back to what Web 1 is and then explain what Web 2 is and then what Web 3 is all about to give that context. So when we started with the internet and all the infrastructure that was built around the internet, the interactions between data and the users were limited to you being able to read data, right? So for instance, if you had a file, you could read the file, you could store it, but then the data was kind of there in the internet and the limits to interacting were there, and that was it. With Web 2, what happened was that a lot of new applications started to be developed, especially around social media. And so the companies that we know today, Google, Meta, all these kind of like social media companies start to look at, I guess like data as kind of a asset for them to not just kind of like understand you and profile you and, kind of, in a way, use the data for marketing and for developing new more products. And your interaction with that data was almost, and it's still almost like you're, in a way, giving it away, and you don't have agency or ownership of that data. So this is what's called like Web 2, like where you're mostly at the social media interactions level. And also the outreach of the applications of the web are more on the only interacting and interaction side. Now with Web 3, the huge change, and I guess the whole change is that Web 3 is basically that infrastructure based on blockchain that enables data to not just be, of course, like out there and you interact with it, but you can own it. And so the concept of ownership becomes central. And why now it's a good moment for metaverse? Because we have companies that are being created and are being kind of like pioneers in their models for enabling users and people to own the data and go from the shift of, these companies and the internet has the data disconnected from ourselves to more like, okay, we're co-creating this together and I own and I have the agency and the ownership. The metaverse is the interface of that infrastructure, which is called Web 3. And the way we interact, so the data becomes more of a token or an NFT. So it's an asset that has a value, unit of storage, and unit of account. So the data is not just the read and write, but it's almost like an asset. And so it's more like a wallet. And you, as a creator and as a person, you have more of a say. And so with the rise of technology, and also like after what we've seen that some companies do with our data, I think a lot of people have said, okay, we want to own our data. We want to be able to have some type of agency to that. And also like when we create, we want to be able to have the rights to that data. And so this is kind of the shift. And I think it's a good time. I think it's also important to mention that we must be also so mindful that a lot of people still don't have access to the internet, still don't have access to mobile devices or computer devices. So I think we're also in a perspective of a privilege in a way. And I think, now more than ever, I think with all the technology that we have, it's also very important to be very inclusive in terms of how we're designing and building the metaverse. Of course, like keeping in mind, there's a lot to be done in terms of connectivity still, but that's a very kind of brief overview of what I think in terms of this.
Thank you, Elena, so much. Chad and Emil, what you would like to add? Just to remind you, remember that the question is, what do you think that now is the right time for metaverse to exist?
Sure. So the metaverse definition is broad, right? So there's so many different elements of what a metaverse is, what Web3, what blockchain is, and there's so many use cases. There's so many different applications being used for this. But in my world is the metaverse of like the Sandbox or Decentraland, where there's actual land assets that are NFTs that are people are actually purchasing land in the Sandbox or land in Decentraland as a brand, as a business, to create a virtual storefront to be able to engage and retain their customers at a different level. So that's at a brand level. So at a consumer player level, it's basically play to earn versus play to pay or pay to play. So you have your PlayStations, you have your Xbox, where the generation that's going to be using the metaverse in the next 5 to 10 years, they're very to, buying a $600, $700 PlayStation and then $100 and then basically putting their mom's credit card in to skin up or to buy a gun, right? Where the metaverse now, it's actually play to earn. So they're going in and experiencing these different games and gamification and actually earning tokens and earning NFTs that, in Venezuela, there's actually individuals that are playing in the metaverse now and earning more on a monthly basis than they would having a job at a store or what have you. So there's so many different applications, but there's so many amazing things that are happening in the metaverse right now, not only on a brand front, but also a player front.
Thank you, Chad. Emil, do you want to add something else?
No, I think I see it from as you saw the slides, I see much more from a pragmatic infrastructure perspective. There is a shift in terms of infrastructure that changed to allow this world to exist. But from a philosophical perspective, it's funny, when all this stuff was happening, one of our advisors, an anthropologist, and I asked him, what's his opinion, and he said, there's nothing new. The metaverse is just another version of what we've always been done, which is escapism. As humans, we've always had theater, movies, music, all kinds of things to allow us to escape. And this is just one new version of it. But the biggest, I guess, to Chad's point, I think Alana's point is, it is an opportunity to, like I say, play to earn, which I think is going to open up a lot of opportunities for people, which it already is, for people who don't have access to capital or access to a job, let's say, to monetize on their data, which is really interesting from that perspective, right? So it could either open up an interesting market for the world, or it can just become another technological divide. We don't know that answer yet, right? But like, at least from our case, we're working with the Council for Inclusive Capitalism to make Mindbank a more inclusive platform across the world. But that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Emil. Now I would like to ask you about the challenges. What is the biggest challenge you are seeing right now for this industry?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I think, I'll kind of go in the industry in which we're at. And I don't agree that the metaverse is escaping at all. I think from kind of like the possibilities that technology opens today, we have, in particular in our vertical, which is climate finance, the possibility to not just kind of create a representation of nature, which is being destroyed as we speak. In less than 10 years, we won't have corals. So very small children won't have that almost luxury to dive in the oceans and touch the corals and see the fish diving, right? And so we have a critical problem in terms of what's happening with nature right now. And what we're doing with ePioneers, to also give you that context, is first digitizing nature in the metaverse so that it's made visible, fundable, and tradable. So to us, is not escape. This is a very problematic challenge that we have for humanity to continue living and for the best nature in the world to continue thriving. And I think, in terms of the approach that we're doing is by creating this awareness where we have, the ocean, for instance, being warm, and also at the same time, lots of resources and people who don't necessarily understand the magnitude of the problem. So what we do as a company is we digitize these assets, we turn them into assets. We partner with local organizations ranging from NGOs to governments to also private entities. And then you can see the representation of, for instance, a jaguar, which is in danger of extinction, or pink dolphin, which is also in danger of extinction, or the Amazon rainforest, too. We're working here in Brazil with that. And once you make it visible and digital, people in all other parts of the world who haven't even seen these corals or these trees in the Amazon can not just like have that kind of proximity to these environments, but also enable these environments to either be sustained, restored, or protected. And so to us, the metaverse is a way to not just kind of like create this visibility and open the world to the rest of the world in a way, but also channel resources and also enable people to see the traceability of where these resources are going, where they are coming from, right? So it's a very open system. And this creates more transparency, efficiency, and of course, like connection. So to us, it's more about that application of the metaverse. And the challenges, I think, are huge, especially around education. So a lot of people have ideas of what the metaverse is or not. This is being created, so I think it's early stage. But a lot of people have ideas of Web3 as only the cryptocurrency side and don't necessarily understand blockchain. So there's a huge challenge there in terms of education. Also access. So for instance, if I want to go to the Amazon and there's no internet, how am I going to, create this metaverse of this Amazon kind of ecosystem? So I think these are kind of the two main challenges. And of course, regulation. I think a lot of times, a lot of public governments don't necessarily go at the speed of technology. Actually, very little times governments go at the speed of technology. And so we're creating technology before the laws are being created. And it's a challenge for the governments to go at that speed or even enable these ecosystems to thrive from the innovation side. So I think those are kind of the three main challenges, yeah.
Thank you, Ileana. Chad and Emil.
Sure, I can go next. So in our world, again, where we're working with brands and advertisers, I think, the metaverse has incredible opportunities for brands to engage their customers, especially the new generations that are coming up that are actually using the metaverse, that are knowledgeable about metaverse, that understand it and really enjoy it, the experience, right? So one of the biggest challenges that we're trying to solve right now with brands and advertisers to have an amazing, engaging experience inside the metaverse, it is enormous. There's so many barriers right now, but at the same time, it's so new. So some of the challenges are for a brand, for example, we're talking to a yoga studio that has 100 locations in the States. She's like, Chad, we'd love to have a yoga studio inside the sandbox where we can have live virtual yoga sessions. We can gamify the experience so they can earn NFTs, so gated NFTs and rewards that can translate into real world rewards as well, like a yoga mat that's delivered to them on time. There's so many applications that brands can have and engage with their customers that they can't outside the metaverse. But the challenge again is, okay, so she's like, so how do I buy land? How do I set up a wallet? How do I convert my fiat money into Ethereum and sand to be able to purchase this land? And then how do I find those resources of voxel designers to be able to architect and build my yoga studios on my piece of land? And then how do I create the gamified experiences? And then how do I get my customers to go to that land? So there's a lot of challenges right now, a lot of barriers, but again, the space is so new. But we're trying to solve those challenges. We're trying to make it very easy for them so they can have those engaging experiences. And not to mention the advertisers, gone are the days of paying for a big billboard on a street or PPC on Google Ads and spending incredible amounts of money on PPC or Facebook or what have you. It's going to be interactive, engaging, virtual, real-time advertising that's in play, in-game, non-intrusive experiences for advertisers within those individual experiences on the land themselves. So massive amounts of opportunities in the future here.
Thank you, Chad. Emil.
Sure. I think my biggest fear is that we become a society of extrinsically motivated society, where it's all about what's in it for me. If I do this, I get tokens. I do that, then we lose our sense of, let me just help this person. Let me just do something for the sake of it should be done. Or because it could totally well happen that, we become a world in this, where you only do something if you're going to get something. Right. And that's not a good place to be. It's one of the reasons why we haven't tokenized the platform ourselves yet, because we're trying to find out our own way of how do we make it so that we can intrinsically motivate people to participate, not just extrinsic motivations. That's on the, let's say, on the philosophical and on the side. On the technical side, there's tons of technical limitations, specifically for emerging markets, right? So that could be, that's always an issue, and it's always going to be an issue, and I don't think we can solve that at any time soon. But one thing, as history's shown anything, what happens is that there's a leapfrog of technology, right? So maybe they might not have the infrastructure by land, but they'll get it by air. As I'm talking about, like, internet connectivity for specifically. And I think those are the main two challenges that I see, of course, other than, like, typical stuff that you see today, like, people hacking and these kind of things. But it's really, I see that's the biggest challenge, right? That meritocracy kind of mentality could be an issue.
Thank you, Emil. Some of you mentioned that government regulations somehow as well can have an impact in all of this that is going around the metaverse. So how government regulations can make a difference in metaverse and crypto space? Please take into consideration that each one of you have been living in different places all around the globe. So if you would like to tell us a little bit of how it is in that specific place, feel free to do that.
Okay, great. This is one of my favorite topics. I think governments, the role of governments is to serve. The definition of a governor, public servant, is to make sure the citizens are at their best capacity and capability. And I think with technology, we have seen that there sometimes there's a gap between how politics work and how technology is enabling this or not. In terms of the infrastructure of the law itself, I'll give you the example of Brazil. So Brazil created open banking 7 years ago, and now Brazil is the home of many of the biggest tech companies in the world, especially in fintech. It also has from the central bank, the separation of the central bank and the government. So they work, even though there's the central bank, they work on separate agendas depending on the president who's in turn. And also there's an interoperable system called the PIX. So everyone has access to a QR code and a wallet and can pay with this QR code and receive funds with the QR code, regardless of the bank you're using. And this applies to all banks, whether these are fintechs, that are small startups or huge startups, or big traditional legacy banks. And so this has created massive inclusion. Brazil has like the top 5 in terms of transactions with digital in the past 2 years. And a lot of people who before had no access to credit or no access to banking have it. And you can see the quality of the innovation in terms of Web3 for fintech and the rest. Now let's go to Colombia, which is my home country. And I love Colombia. I have created some laws in Colombia with the digital nomads visa that we pushed for with the government, but there's no open banking. And so if there's an ecosystem that forces entrepreneurs to create partnerships with legacy banks to be able to launch a platform or a crypto wallet or a Web3 wallet, the chances of these entrepreneurs doing that are very slow, very low. And the process takes like 2 years. And so you start losing entrepreneurs, and then only 4 or 5 banks control the whole banking system in the country. And so there are closed doors, there's no way to innovate. You have lots of exclusion in terms of, access to some opening bank accounts. And so I think these types of kind of like mentalities create or hinder the development of innovation. And with these two particular countries, you can see the huge difference of creation of value beyond. And when I say value, it's not just money. I think we have to go beyond what money is. And I have nothing against money, but I think laws can, create some things that are very positive or not. And I think in particular with the metaverse, we are starting to see some countries banning, technologies or being very slow to regulate. And I think, like technology is one of these kind of like, I guess like variables that won't stop. The more you try to ban it, the more ways people will find to kind of continue innovating. So that's actually used as a fuel and as an inspiration.
Thank you, Ilana. Yes, Chad.
100% agree with.
An order here. Always Ilana is the one to start, then we have Chad, then we have Emil.
No, I mean, 100% agree with Lana. So what she's saying, as far as the government trying to regulate, there will always be a way to get around it. And let's think about Web3 and blockchain in the metaverse. It's going to be very challenging for governments to try to block it. It's better for them to accept it, adopt it, and have the next generation be educated by it, because it's the future. It's inevitable, right? So, I mean, if you look at El Salvador, for example, El Salvador obviously, it's accepted the crypto, the Bitcoin, which I don't really agree with. I think it should be another crypto or their own El Salvadorian coin. But they increased tourism by 30%. They're one of the innovators. They're one of the the first in Latin America to be able to fully adopt it, fully accept it. Now, whether it's going to work or not, who knows? Or is the local population, are they going to be onboarded, or are they going to be able to adopt it to really get the true benefits from it? But there's a lot of countries globally that are accepting cryptocurrencies, accepting mining, accepting digital currencies. It's the future. But again, as Lena said, it's going to be very hard for governments to control, minimize the future. It's better for them to adopt it, educate the new generations that are coming up to be able to be self-supported, learn Web3, learn blockchain, because it's the future.
Yeah, and I guess I'll add to that in sense of like the whole concept of Web3 and meta. Let's stick on the Web3 concept first. It is decentralization by nature, right? So having a central entity regulating is kind of counterintuitive to the whole Web3 philosophy, because the idea behind Web3 is that the community, the DAO, decentralized authority organization, is what manages the let's say the community. And at this particular stage, any regulation is just going to put brakes on any innovation. I think really it's kind of a wait and see type of thing, or build it, go make mistakes, burn the house down, and then we figure out where to fix and where to regulate, because I don't think anyone has a crystal ball yet to figure this thing out. But the community does do one thing really well, and it's self-regulate, and that's been shown over and over again, right? That as a community, these communities tend to really self-regulate very well in innovation, choosing what to innovate, what to improve, and what coins to adopt, and what survives and what dies. So I think that they should just kind of like let it be for now, because any regulation is going to be counterintuitive to innovation.
Sorry, I was on mute. I was saying thank you, Emil. Now, I mean, metaverse is connected with technology. My question for all of you would be, do you think that access to technology will shape the future of the metaverse? Difficult question.
Should I go first now?
Yes.
Yeah, I totally think that. I mean, during COVID, you see it, and I think this is a massive also kind of responsibility that we have been having the privilege to be aware of the inequalities that we have, not just within our countries, but in the world in general. And, I think that it's almost like there's always two possibilities when you see this happening. One is just to kind of shut down and go, forward with your life as if, there's nothing happening in other regions of the world. And then there's the other way, which is like, okay, you can keep with your life, you can continue living like this, but what can we do for other people to get on board in this? With Web3, what you're doing is like adding another layer of ownership of the data that you're creating or you're having interactions with. So ownership, it's not tied to just transactions. I think there has to be a definition of ownership that goes beyond money, because otherwise we'll be very stuck. But ownership is, if there's a company that I'm interacting with that has my data, I can not just like put a value to it. It doesn't have to be money or anything. It's like my wallet that's connected to that company, so I can trace that data and I can own that asset in the metaverse, right? And I think that if you don't have access to the basic of like internet, for instance, or even a device, you're being just totally out of the whole metaverse system. So I think this gap of what's happening with the metaverse and what's happening outside can be bridged with offline online interactions. And we're seeing it, for instance, what Chad is doing in terms of enabling off-site assets, so real world assets be connected to an online experience, so the metaverse. I think in a way this creates these bridges, but again, who has the access to the internet in certain cities or certain areas? I think there's a massive kind of like consideration to be taken into account there. But the more technology is being developed, and if we don't close those gaps of inequality, the more the gap will widen. So I think that's a challenge that we'll have, regardless of whether it's metaverse or AI or other types of technologies.
Thank you, Ilana. Yes, Chad.
So my turn. But I 100% agree with Lana. I'm actually working with a company now that's actually rewarding consumers for their data. So, for example, Facebook, you're not rewarded for giving them so much incredible amounts of personal data. Instagram's the same, Twitter's the same. But the new companies that are coming out, the new innovators, are actually rewarding for their data, and the more data they provide, the more they're earning. And I know Emil's not going to like this on that point, but we're actually doing the same thing. So we're creating a space inside the metaverse. So we're creating an incredible, what's called move to earn. So the more you move, the more you earn. So you're actually getting physically fit and you're earning at the same time. For example, you have an app and NFT called STEPN. STEPN is one of the most innovative NFT move to earn platforms there are, and it's becoming incredibly popular, and massive amounts of people are adopting this. So it's a good thing on that point, as far as educating and encouraging people to get, but also educating them and adopting them and onboarding them in the NFT smart contract blockchain world at the same time. So there's many elements of personal data, and I think, and that's why kind of Facebook is changing their name to Meta. They're realizing the future. They're realizing they have to innovate or be left behind, and they already are being left behind by all these new innovative companies that are creating incredible experiences and rewarding people for their data.
Thank you, Chad. Emil.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely something to that. People are extrinsically motivated, right? They want to earn, and I think what it does open opportunity for people who don't have access to capital to get access to capital. That's the beauty of it, right? That it expands, And I think from our perspective, it's always like, okay, how can we use technology to enhance humanity? We literally call it AI enhanced humanity. That's like our purpose, almost like the mission, right? How do we go beyond who we are today? And in our context, the digital twin is a mirror to yourself, right? And that's in a sense what a metaverse is. It's a mirror to our universe, right? In a different way. But what impact does it have on this world is really what we're trying to do. And I think, Chad, like you mentioned, this pay to earn is great because it gives access to capital, right? That otherwise wouldn't be there. And the whole step in, we were looking into that as well, because we have a whole physiological side of things where by living a healthy lifestyle, you would get some type of, let's say, token or reduction in expenses, or get an Apple Watch, or whatever the case may be. So we're looking at ways to do that, for sure, because ultimately people are, extrinsically motivated. We work because we want money. But when it comes to, I guess the back, if you take a step back in terms of what is this metaverse, what is this digital twin that we're creating, it is about how do we use technology to move humanity forward, right, and improve us. And there's never one answer to that, right? There's many ways, and hopefully each one of us can do our part.
Thank you, Amy. Now let's talk about developing countries. Can metaverse offer benefits for the developing countries? How?
Yeah, definitely. And I think we shouldn't limit humans to just motivation for money. And this is from the lens of, like, for instance, designing. When we're designing the metaverse, hopefully we'll have builders, like real builders who have their technologies already built in the world, and not just an idea, but actually the real solution out there. I think hopefully there's going to be motivations beyond money. In general, we have four. So, stuff, access, status, and power. So being the four main drivers of people. And of course, like, it doesn't mean that we're limited to only that. So this is from, like, the theory of game design. When you're approaching designing games, in general, in psychology perspective. But I think in terms of developing countries or more developed nations, I think, it depends on the perspective where you're coming from. Just to give you the example of Brazil. So Brazil is supposed to be a developing country, but over 100 million people, we have more than 200 million people here in Brazil, and over 100 million people already have their Pix, their mobile wallet, and they transact with, the Pix every time they interact. In some countries, in some regions of the world, cash is still being very used. There's a central banking that has super high inflation. And so I think in terms of kind of like developing nations or developed economies, I think the perspective is super critical to also be mindful for. In particular, not to fall into our own biases of what develop means and what it doesn't mean. I think in general, in terms of the metaverse, I think definitely looking at access to, data, so access to internet, access to devices, and then, like, educational level, of course, and, lower levels of inequality. But yeah, I'll be very careful at kind of, especially coming from the metaverse, saying some countries are still developing, because a lot of times these countries are actually pushing for metaverse or Web3 faster than the so-called developed economies. And so I think this is something to be very mindful of.
Thank you, Lana. So I guess, Chad.
So I mean, it's kind of an open-ended, broad question and answer, right? I mean, if there's so many ways that the governments and countries themselves can really utilize the metaverse, Web3, blockchain to educate the new generations that are coming up. It's not only just extrinsic monetary value to these programs. I mean, for example, Colombia could have a government, a piece of land in Sandbox and Decentraland, just like Nike, just like HSBC has, just like Gucci has, just like Snoop Dogg has, and they can create a learning experience for anyone traveling to Colombia, or even their students, or have a virtual university where they're learning what's called learn to earn. So they're learning and they're earning NFTs that could have a discount on their university bill in the future. There's so many different applications. There's so many ways to do this and gamify the experience, both intrinsic and extrinsic value. That's not just monetary. I think if the government start realizing this in the third tier of the government, which are the banks, the universities, the education systems, and all that, if they start utilizing this and start getting the next generation in those countries to start learning blockchain, start learning smart contracts, start learning NFT, start learning Web3, I think the country as a whole will increase their economic value. Their, it would increase the average salary that people earn, like, for Colombia or El Salvador or what have you, even the United States. I mean, the United States is already doing this. And there's a lot of self-made billionaires that are like 18, 19, 20 years old that have learned this space, self-learned it, because there's not a lot of information online. I mean, it's a lot about self-learning, but if you can create virtual universities to help this younger generation, everyone will win. It's a win-win-win.
Yeah, and I'll extend that a bit because it is, it really just comes down to GDP. Literally, it's the productivity of the nation increases. You'll get smarter people, more educated people. A key factor of GDP is what's called the velocity of money, how fast money can move around. And obviously, when you have tokenization and QR code payments and stuff like that, money moves around faster. So the economy, it spurs up the economy. What that relates to in terms of like GDP increase over year, I don't know, but I'm sure it compounds, right? People over generations, over years, it gets more and more. So it'd be strategically very important for countries to adopt it, developing nations, because it just increases the speed of development. And that's kind of what the role of the digital twin really, right? Is how do we make you a better human being, right? Either smarter, work better. And with fintech, it is about the velocity of the money.
Thank you, Emin. Ilana, at the beginning you were talking about Web3. So what is the role of Web3 in the climate challenge? Maybe you can remind us what Web3 means and then answer the question.
Yeah, so look, unfortunately, some people only kind of see, I guess, the value of technology from a very monetary side. With climate, what happens is that, once we lose the most biodiverse ecosystems in the world, that's it, and you cannot purchase that, you cannot make people do anything for that. Like, it's kind of the end of the story. And so what we're doing with ePioneers is first bringing different perspectives into account. We're working directly with the Arhuacos, which is the most respected Native American community in Colombia. And we're co-creating the sustainable metaverse with them so that their perspective on what nature is and has always been is in the metaverse. And we're also working with the private sector, investors who want to have, sustainable development and also economic empowerment in their societies, because they see it as something very positive and not something to run away from. And also in terms of public sector, we're partnering with the governments as well. So we are, as a brand ambassador for Colombia, there's a massive responsibility around, Colombia being the most biodiverse country in the world by square meter, and you being a brand ambassador of a country that has a history of, realities that have kind of created a perspective of what Colombia is. When, in Colombia, you have the most amount of butterflies than anywhere in the world. You have more birds than anywhere in the world, even combined with the European region and the US. We have incredible ecosystems in terms of nature, incredibly talented people. And so we're redefining the narrative of what, I guess, perception can be, and enabling people like the Native Americans, like, the private sector, like artists. We're also working with artists. We're working with academics. So we're working with as many people as possible from different perspectives to shape this definition of narrative and possibility. And I think this goes, beyond just extrinsic motivations, because Web3 gives you the possibility to, own your data. And of course, your data is not just resources. Your data goes beyond that. And so this creates a massive opportunity for people who, in a way, have been shaped by different narratives or have ideas of progress around concepts that can be positive or negative, depending on your biases and your perspectives. But in this particular climate case, we are in kind of like runway in terms of time. We are seeing extreme weathering happening. We're seeing the collapse of some biodiversity ecosystems. And so I think we need to be very mindful about that and bring different perspectives, whether those are extrinsic motivations or intrinsic motivations. That's up to you and yourself to answer that at the end of the day. But this is like a very kind of like urgent way we're kind of redefining that narrative and enabling people to participate. So this is kind of how we're doing it. There are many details on how in particular, but yeah, like if you want to learn more, you can go to epioneer.io or also read the blog there or climatecity.epioneer.io. So, or go.epioneer.io. So you can see the sustainable metaverse and what it's all about.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you so much for that. Chad, and I would like to ask you, what are some of the biggest barriers for a small to medium-sized business? I mean, about 100 to 10,000 employees to have an effective, engaging customer experience and presence within the metaverse?
So it really depends on the vertical of the business itself and what the end goals are as far as engaging their customers. But again, the space is so new. You're seeing a lot of massive brands buying up space inside Sandbox, Decentraland, and creating really cool experiences. You have HSBC, you have Nike, Adidas, brands, you have eToro, which is a financial. So you have so many different verticals buying and creating experiences. Now, those companies are multi-billion-dollar companies. They have the access, they have the means, they have the resources. For small to medium-sized businesses, as I said earlier, there's so many different challenges that we're trying to help solve, which is, what's the best low-cost, low-risk entry into having an experience in the metaverse, so you don't have to buy the land. You need an expert team of developers that can create an amazing storefront experience, gamified experience, both intrinsic, extrinsic, whatever you're trying to accomplish. But as far as I think the small and medium-sized businesses will be the main players in the metaverse in the future in the next 2 to 3 years, I think, because these larger, massive corporations that are seeing these incredible ROI and benefits and experiences will be kind of the innovators of the space, and then the SMBs will come in next. But again, we have to eliminate those barriers, which is what I said earlier.
Thank you, Chad. Emil, one question for you. Please tell me which will be the pros and the cons of psychology and metaverse, considering the solution that you are building.
Well, I guess the pro and the cons. Okay. So the pro would be the closest digital representation of yourself in the metaverse, right? The con could be an over-analyzing yourself, which sometimes people tend to do themselves, right? That's kind of what I would see. But ultimately, if you look at what the metaverse is as a concept, it is a duplication of our universe, right? Or attempted duplications to some extent. So for us, I think what we always try to do is like, how can we get as close as possible to the actual person, right? A replica of that actual person. And that begins with we basically broke it down into 2 sections, right? You've got the mind and the body. So the mind bank has the mental data and, let's say, the storytelling and the personality. And another brand that we're launching is called Body Bank, has the physiological part, which is your heart rate, and that's more on the health side. And Mind Bank's more on the mental side. And then these 2 data sets work together, obviously, so that you can understand yourself better and develop. Because keep in mind also that the metaverse is a snippet in time, right? Like, are you the same avatar or whatever character in whatever metaverse today that you will be 30 years from now? Probably not, right? So as digital twins, it's really about evolving and understanding that evolution as a human. I personally think the winners are going to be the brands that can merge the 2 worlds, right? There's a bit of you in the metaverse and there's a bit of you in the real universe. And these 2 entities are one and the same and interacting with each other, but they have their own roles and responsibilities within each universe, right? That's how I foresee it. And those are the pros and the cons in weighing that, yeah.
Thank you, Emil. Now, as the audience can see, each one of you has a different background, and each one of you is working in a different field, but somehow you are related with metaverse. How do you see the metaverse in 50 years, regardless that sector or that industry? How do you see metaverse in 50 years?
Wow, that's a question. In 50 years, that's a lot of years. I think we're already seeing, you know, what's called DeSci, for instance, decentralized science. So this is already happening. Like I was speaking with, we're doing this program called Stacks, an accelerator, and there's one company that is taking DNA samples of users for either research or, you know, medical applications. And they're enabling the users to own their DNA samples and results. So this is one application. So I think that's just one. There are so many beyond the kind of NFTs that we have kind of been known for in Web3, right? And this is happening already. So I think 50 years from now, well, we're probably going to have, you know, interplanetary life for sure, you know, AIs who are super self-agent, you know, perhaps like super long, you know, people live in many, many years, hopefully nature that's alive. But the metaverse, I think it's already happening, you know, and the next 2 to 3 years and perhaps 5 years max are the more critical. Some people say that we are at the same kind of phase of what the internet was at the very early stages. And I think that, you know, as a builder too. So I think we don't have to go 50 years down the road. We can go like 5 years down the road. Yeah, I think these will permeate all activities of society, not just science, like it's already happening, but also education. You know, we're seeing it also with like inclusion. We're also seeing it with human rights, you know, like climate. So I think this is already happening. And the countries that are enabling this will definitely see more from the creator side. So yeah, very exciting times for sure.
Yes, Chad.
Well, I mean, so 50 years, wow, that's like we're gonna have aliens, I think, on the planet by then. But you know, in this space, it's so funny because you know I'm involved in so many different LinkedIn groups that are in blockchain groups, metaverse groups, Web3 groups, smart contract groups, and I can tell you in these groups, a month in this space is an eternity, right? I mean, it's like I'm literally reading 3 hours a day every day just to keep up with the new stealth companies that are coming out that are building amazing technologies. You know, that will definitely transition and innovate the world itself, but. You know, again, yeah, a month in this space is an eternity. So, you know, most experts that I'm networking with or in groups with, you know, have been working in this space for less than a year, right? I mean, that's how new this space is. So 50 years from now, man, it's gonna, I can't tell you, but I can definitely say probably the next 5 years, we're gonna see massive innovations and massive changes in culture and how people interact, and hopefully for the better and not for the worse. But I think it's definitely going to empower a lot of people, which is kind of what you see today. Like a lot of the younger generations are leaving the workforce, are not doing the 9-to-5 job. They're self-learning, innovating. They're learning these new technologies, and they're increasing their own personal value as well as the world's value at will. But that's my 2 cents.
I guess to go back to the first slide with my daughter, you know, I started this whole journey thinking, what is her world going to look like 40 years from now? So maybe not 4. I'll go to 40 or 50. Yeah. At least from our perspective, you know, my measurement of success for Mindbank is when our technology is on another planet. And Ilana alluded to that to some extent, right? You know, interplanetary life is going to happen. That's part of it. And what role does your digital twin play in that space is very interesting, because there's a wealth of knowledge in the world that has to go from here to there, you know. And let's say a decentralized system is meant specifically for that use case. That's on one. On another level, I think from a what is it going to mean for humans in this planet? Let's say is I think we're going to get a lot more advancement. I hope so, at least. More personalized learning, more productivity from people, and being able to do more with their lives, living longer, obviously, living healthier. But the metaverse as we see it today won't even exist. It'll be something completely different. I really think it's going to be what I would call the multiverse, right? Where you have your world physical here in this planet, your digital twin or your digital version is adding value somewhere else, right? And someone else can be interacting with it someone else. So I can imagine, like, the best way to describe it is imagine you using your phone, using your desktop, going into your car, talking to your digital twin in the car, and then you walk in your house and you have an experience in your house. That, and move it to another physical dimension, meaning another planet, would be the closest thing to the metaverse. And then within, but this avatar-like system where people go, that'll be perfect for like the gaming industry and entertainment. But for everyday life, to some extent, probably won't be too. The usage will drop dramatically.
Thank you, Amy. Now, the last question for all of you would be, what advice would you give to those entrepreneurs and business owners that are trying to innovate, maybe with a product or with a service in this field? Briefly, what advice would you give to them?
Well, so I'll say, move fast. Connect with communities online on Discord and other channels. So reach out to founders building the Web3, not just talking about it. And then also don't be scared to learn new things, because this is being built right now. New blockchains are being launched every year almost. And it's very new. So if you want to be part of the creators, this is a really good moment. People are in the Web3 community tend to be very open. And the builders are very open as well. So if you want to reach out to them, your chances to having a reply are very high. And because there's this culture and mindset of we're building, we're learning as we grow, and we're understanding that these technologies are very new. Even if you're super technical, you're always open to like learning new things and applying new ways. And especially if you're creating something new, don't be afraid to start doing it and reaching out. So yeah, those will be my kind of advice.
I would say I would recommend every business to hire someone on their team that can be dedicated to this effort, whether it be researching the metaverse, whether it be researching how to apply smart contracts, Web3, decentralized, centralized, what have you. There's a lot to Web3 applicable concepts there as well. You don't have to go 100% Web3. You can do a slow merge from Web2 into Web3, but I would recommend putting someone on your team that's dedicated 100% to this. Start off with creating an NFT for your product, right? There's a lot of tools coming out, including ourselves, and I'm happy to share these tools for anyone that you can easily. It's a software as a service. You can create your own NFT for your product. You can upload that; it will automatically generate a smart contract for you, and then you can put it up on your website, or these services will provide a website for you. It's already integrated to OpenSea, all these different exchanges. So you can start dabbling and experimenting and creating NFTs for your product, and then just kind of grow from there. And then I think once the businesses start realizing the utility of these NFTs and how their customer base is engaging and interacting with these NFTs, whether it be gym membership access, whether it be product demonstration or receiving products, or it's unlimited how you can utilize NFTs for your business. But again, just like Lana said, just dabble, start creating something.
I guess my perspective is always the same. Think big, think long term, and don't be motivated by money. And think big. It's like, come up with a big idea that's going to really hopefully change things and inspire people. Think long term is if you're always looking at it from a very short-sighted perspective, like when you change the perspective of time and see it from a long-term goal, like in our case, I want this technology to be on another planet. The little problems that come along the way don't seem so big. That's what I'm trying to say. And you're going to come across all kinds of challenges, right? So when you look at it back in the hindsight, you say, okay, this is my 50-year plan. This is just a small moment, a small setback in my time, right? And then the last one is must be intrinsically motivated, right? Because you see so many startups and people, oh, this is a good idea, I can make so much money, but then you hit those challenges, and if you're not motivated by passion, you're gonna give up. So definitely find something that you're passionate about.
Thank you guys for sharing those thoughts. Now, thank you so much to the audience for being here. We actually had very good numbers as well, very high levels of people that made the registration. Remember that you can always continue in touch with our panelists. You can approach them directly. Otherwise, I will be happy to put you in contact. So just let me know and I will do the match. This conversation will continue because next week we're going to have a networking group meeting. So if you would like to join us, just reach me and I will give you all the details so that you can be there. Of course, our panelists, if you have the time, we will be there, welcome you to that session. But before ending this webinar, I have a surprise for all of you. So give me just 1 second. I'm going to try to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it. Can you see the screen? Can someone please tell me if you can see the screen?
I can see it. Tree certificate.
Oh, perfect. Yes, we would like to thank you all for being here, part of this panel, and for sharing all these wonderful insights about metaverse, but more than that, it's about inspiring us. So thank you so much for that. We will be planting trees in your name, so we're going to be sending you this certificate to your email. That means that 1 tree goes for Ilana Melch. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. That's
Another
beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ilana. R3 for M. Thank you so much here as well.
Thank you.
And of course, another 3 for Shad. Thank you so much for being part of this panel. I hope to see you once again in a different digital talk. Remember, the technology obliges, and have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
It was a great meeting, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You are currently the only person in this conference.